some kind of a connection. But it's not to snoop or to be in the know. It's with the goal of responding to people with prayer or compassion and love. This is the way of Jesus, and Jesus invited us to be workers in the harvest. And last week we talked about that, responding to the people that we see with compassion and love and prayer. And this prayer moves us to be involved in sharing God's love with our neighbors. How will they know the love of Jesus unless we show them? Now, today we're going to continue to follow after the example of Jesus and love our neighbors as we search for someone who is searching. Now, this is another practice Jesus modeled for us. And through his ministry, that's what Jesus did. He searched for people who were searching. I remember John Wesley said that when he preached to crowds of thousands, he looked for the people with the bright eyes, people who looked like they were hungering and thirsting. Jesus's eyes were always trained to search for the person who was searching for healing, who was searching for community, who was searching for teaching, who was searching for the real connection with God that only Jesus could bring. One of my favorite stories about Jesus was written by a man named John, and Jesus then sought out a conversation with an outcast woman. He could have looked right through her and went on his way, but he saw her and he sought to make a connection with her. Jesus saw her brokenness and pain. She was drawing water at a well, and it was in the middle of the day, and she was all alone, and she had faced the scorn of the people in her community because she looked for love in all the wrong places, and she'd gotten divorced several times, and she was now living with a man. But instead of judging her or rejecting her like everyone else had, he had a kind, compassionate, truthful, challenging conversation with her that changed her life and the life of her village together. Because after she had this encounter with Jesus, after she had made this connection with the one who would give her water that she would never thirst again after she drank, she went home to her community, and she was so different. There was something so different about her that all of her neighbors, the ones who wouldn't talk to her, the ones who had rejected her, said, "What is going on with you? We got to go see this guy. We need to go see who he is." And because of this 5-time divorced woman who was living with the guy, her village got saved. That's pretty amazing. That's pretty amazing because Jesus saw her. Another time, Jesus saw a man perched up in a branch in a sycamore tree. Do you know who I'm talking about? Zacchaeus, you come down. You remember that song? This little man was no one's friend. A despised tax collector named Zacchaeus, who was high up in a tree but low on friendship and forgiveness and a future. But Jesus saw him. Jesus saw him. He responded to him. He connected with him. Jesus actually invited himself to Zacchaeus' house for dinner, having dinner with a despised person. And Zacchaeus' life was changed forever. At Zacchaeus' house, Jesus said this. Jesus said to him, "Today, salvation has come to this house, because this man too is a son of Abraham." He saw Zacchaeus, who everyone hated. He saw him as a cherished child of God and person of worth. For the Son of Man came to what? Read this out with me. To seek and to save the lost. Jesus was always searching for someone who was searching. And we see this not only in his interactions with people, but in his teaching as well. In Luke's biography of Jesus, there's this time, it happened all the time, but Jesus was being criticized by the religious leaders for what? Hanging around with people like the woman at the well and the tax collector. In response, Jesus tells 3 powerful search stories back to back to back. First, there's this story of the lost sheep. This sheep had just wandered away. Jesus knew that that poor sheep was going to get devoured. That's what happens to sheep when they wander away. Friends, we want to stay right in the middle of the fold, right? Then there was a story of a woman who lost a coin, and the coin was lost because of someone else's action, and the woman had a real sense of desperation as she searched for this coin. Then there's a third story. It was a story of 2 lost sons. Now, why do I say 2 lost sons? Well, hear me out. One is the younger son. He's the one that we hear about all the time. He was sick of living at home. He was sick of his father's rules. He was sick of living under his father's roof. And the son rebels against the father, and he takes off. And the father's heart is full of love and is just broken for his son who is out there living it up. Man, he is living it up and having a blast until the party was over. The second lost son is the older son who stayed in the father's house. But this son didn't have the father's loving heart toward his brother. Instead, he was lost in bitterness and resentment, because here he was staying home, being faithful. He didn't go out and get to roam and party and have a good time. No, he had to stay home and take care of business. See, both sons are lost, one in rebellious and riotous living and one in resentment. Father longs for both of them to be found. See, Jesus is always searching for someone who's searching. And Jesus' search continues today. We can all find ourselves in those stories, can't we? We all can get lost for a lot of reasons. Even followers of Jesus can get lost. Some of us have gotten lost because we just wanted to do our own thing and go our own way. When I was a teen, all I wanted to do was get out of my parents' house. I got out when I was 17, and it was not long before I was devoured. Other of us may feel misplaced or harmed by something someone else did to us, and it left us feeling lost and far from God, and we can't understand why these awful things happen. Haven't we been good? Haven't we loved Jesus? Why did this thing have to happen? And we turn away from God instead of running to him and clinging to him. And that response can only lead to desperation. And then still others, and all of us, probably find we can relate to one of the 2 lost sons in the story of the prodigal. Some of us have rebelled and run away and got lost in wild living, and other of us tried to do all the right things, but our hearts aren't in the right place. And we grow resentful and bitter. See, no matter why you and I get lost, and we do, the good news is that Jesus is always searching for those who are searching. In our lost condition, if we cry out to him, we don't have to get found by anyone or anything other than Jesus, because you know what? The hound of heaven will seek us out and find us exactly where we are. Cry out to Jesus and you will be found. Are you searching today for something? For one reason or another, do you feel lost? The good news is that Jesus came to seek and save you and I. Now, how does Jesus search for us in our searching? J. Howard Olds was an incredible preacher. He was Pastor Wes's dad. Man, this guy was a preacher. And he wrote this before his death in 2008. And here's what he wrote. I like to think Jesus meets us at our point of need. He comes to us where we hurt. To the imprisoned, he is the key to freedom. To the sick, he is the great physician. To the trapped, he is the door. To the hungry, he is the bread of life. To the thirsty, he is living water. To the wanderer, he is the way. To the confused, he is the truth. To the dead, he is the resurrection and the life. To anyone willing to listen, he is the King of kings and Lord of lords. Oh, what a relief it is to find him as a friend. What are you looking for? What could Jesus do for you today? What great news. Jesus searches for those who are searching. Jesus will find you in your searching and meet your needs. Well, thousands of years ago, Jews in the first century were searching, and they were searching for the Messiah. Messiah is the same word for Christ, and it means anointed. Their search for Messiah would drive them one day after a next. They were looking for someone to rescue them from persecution, to rescue them from their daily struggles to survive. And this promised Messiah was going to lead God's people into greatness again. This Messiah would be a leader and a priest and a king, and they waited for the Messiah for thousands of years. And all Jewish boys, they were all taught to search. In fact, all Jews were taught to search, but boys, by the age of 10, would have memorized the Torah. That's the first 5 books of the Bible. Could you imagine memorizing the first 5 books of the Bible? We have sometimes problems memorizing one scripture. I know I do. And then from ages 10 to 14, boys memorized and studied the Psalms and the prophets and the rest of the Old Testament, and they would pay attention. Their ears would perk up when they would hear or they would recite scriptures just like this. As a matter of fact, let's say this out loud together, and let's say it loud. For a child is born to us, a son is given to us. The government will rest on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Who doesn't long for a wonderful counselor, mighty God, everlasting Father, and Prince of Peace? We still long for that, don't we? We long for Jesus Christ. That is the fulfillment of that prophecy, to be alive in our hearts and in our lives. Now, by the age of 10 to 14, the boys knew all that scripture. And this is where their education would end, at about age 14. Their education would end, but not their expectation for that Messiah. And only the academic elite then, what we might think of as the Harvard or Yale qualified students, were invited to continue their studies. And the dream of all good Jewish boys was to become a rabbi, because the teachers were the most celebrated people in the community. The boys had to pass an extensive exam, and if they were chosen, they agreed that they would follow their rabbi's teachings and their rabbi's way of life. When a rabbi invited them, they would drop everything. Could you imagine being at work and someone coming up and inviting you, hey, follow me and you just abandoning everything and taking off with them? Wouldn't that be unusual? But that's what happened in those days. And instead of being annoyed, parents would be delighted that their son was invited to drop everything and go. Well, the group of young men that we're going to look at today just didn't make the cut. Like their father, they chose to be fishermen. But even as they worked as fishermen, that expectation for a Messiah never left them. Two of these fishermen were brothers. Andrew, he was the younger one, and his older brother, Simon. And they'd been listening to a man named John the Baptist. Do you remember John the Baptist, that wild man out in the wilderness who was proclaiming the coming of the Messiah? He's coming, he's coming. And they'd been listening to him. And then one day, when John was preaching this message and all of his followers were out there, Andrew included, and his brother, Andrew was a follower of John the Baptist. He was out there listening. Jesus shows up on the scene and John announces, "This is the one. This is the one that I've been talking about. This is the promised Messiah you've all been waiting for." And right then, literally, Andrew and another young man started following Jesus. Jesus starts walking down the road, and here's Andrew and this other guy right behind him. Jesus turned around and he said, this is my paraphrase, he said, "Why are you following me? What are you searching for?" Well, the scripture actually says, "What are you looking for?" That was Jesus' question to these two young men that are following him now. And they said, "Well, we want to get to know you. We want to know where you're staying. We want to hang out with you. We want to hear about your teaching." And Jesus said, "Come and see." And they spent the day with Jesus. Now, we don't know what all Jesus told them, but we do know that what they experienced that day was a game changer. You know why? Because Andrew, the fisherman, he was hooked. He was hooked on the teachings of Jesus. He was hooked on following Jesus. He was all in. Now, let's look at the account we have. It's in our message notes. It'll be on the screen. Notice the word "found." Okay, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, was one of the two who had heard what John had said and who had followed Jesus. The first thing Andrew did was to find his brother Simon and tell him, "We have found the Messiah, that is the Christ." And he brought him to Jesus. Jesus looked at him and said, "You are Simon, son of John. You will be called Cephas," which, when translated, is Peter. All right, so in Greek, that word "found" is herousiko, and that is where we get the word Eureka. Nobody uses that word anymore, do they? Eureka. And so basically, Andrew is saying, "Eureka! We have found the Messiah, the one that we've been searching for our whole lives, the one that my grandparents and my great-grandparents and my great-great-grandparents is here. Eureka! Praise God, we've all been searching and we've found him." Let's dive into this joy and let's look at the first verse, verse 40. Let's read it out loud together. Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, was one of the two who had heard what John had said and who had followed Jesus. So this is how it all begins. Andrew is searching. Andrew is searching for the Messiah. He's searching. When he goes to hear John the Baptist, he's searching for answers. He's searching for the truth. He's searching for this connection with God. He was really searching after Jesus, only to find Jesus turning around and searching for him. And when we search after Jesus, isn't it wonderful that we find out that Jesus has been pursuing us all along? Andrew spent the day with Jesus, and the experience changed his life because Because for this young Jewish boy, it was a dream come true. This is a kid who went to school for all those years, learned all that scripture, never measured up, didn't make the cut. And here's the one, the professed Messiah, saying, "Come, follow me." Andrew became a follower of Jesus that day, and his eureka moment continues with what happens next. Andrew's next move models our sermon in a sentence as he begins to search for someone who's searching. Let's look at the scripture 41 and 42 again. Read this out loud with me. The first thing Andrew did was to find his brother Simon and tell him, "We have found the Messiah, that is the Christ." And he brought him to Jesus. Andrew knew his older brother, Simon, we know him as Peter, had also been searching. He had been searching his whole life. He had been hopefully expecting that Messiah would come in his lifetime. That was the hopeful expectation of every Jewish person. And his dream, as he was growing up, as he was learning the scripture, was also to have a rabbi to follow after and to continue learning the things of God. And the first thing Andrew did was go and tell his brother, who had also been searching, and to bring him the news, "Eureka, we found him." Now, I'm going to pause this Bible story for a minute. I want to consider the story of our lives and our neighbors. Somebody you know, somebody you're close to, is searching for something. They don't even know that it's God sometimes. I was searching to fill a void in my life, and I tried to fill it with drugs and alcohol. I tried to fill it with men. I didn't know that my search was really for God. And I thank you for people who didn't just look and see some broken young woman, but who actually saw me, saw my need, saw my brokenness, saw my desperation for something in my life. Somebody saw me and started telling me about the things of Jesus. We're all on a search for something. Somebody you know is on a search for hope. You know what? When we go about our jobs, when we're with our family and our friends, we don't really let on very much what's going on the inside. And unless we're seeing each other, we're not going to really know, are we? We're all on a search for something. Some people are on a search for forgiveness. Their past has just weighed them down so heavily. So heavily, they don't know about the forgiveness of Jesus. They don't know about the fact that Jesus came to seek and save the lost and the broken and the lonely and the sad and the sick. Some are looking for security and guidance and patience and purpose, or a friendship that will never let them down. Some of you come into regular contact with people who are searching for a wonderful counselor and a Prince of Peace, someone to show them the way and the truth and the life. And you know what? We can point them in that direction, because we're nobody's way and nobody's truth and nobody's life. But God calls us to point those who are searching. This is the way. This is the way. Searching people cannot experience the blessings of the kingdom without knowing the King. And they won't experience the goodness of God and the grace of God and the peace of God and the fellowship of the Spirit unless someone shares with them who to follow, We can follow after the things of the world, and many of us in here, I know a lot of your stories. Following the things after the world leads to certain destruction. Following the way of Jesus leads to life. It doesn't mean it's easy. This life is not easy. But following Jesus leads to life while we live in life eternal. God's already at work in all of those people's lives, all those people that present themselves as angry and bitter and broken and lost. Jesus is at work in their lives, and it may take 15 or 20 of us or 30 of us or 50 of us, and it might take 20 years, one touch after another, one encounter after the other, for them to finally see Jesus is real. Jesus is alive. Jesus came to save my soul. And what that means, friends, is that we've got to see our neighbors. We have to see our neighbors. We need to ask questions. We need to look and see for the spark that's in their lives, to dig a little bit deeper, to find out their hurts and habits and hopes and fears. And our culture absolutely, today in particular, does not encourage this. So I want to encourage you this week to be like Jesus. I want to encourage you to strike up a conversation with someone. I want to encourage you when you're in line at the grocery store to just see someone, or when you're bringing in your garbage cans to just see someone and ask a question. Ask how to take care of a plant, or if somebody knows what restaurants are open, get some kind of a connection point. I want to go ahead back to the Bible study. Andrew has his eureka moment. He became a follower of Jesus. He goes searching for his brother Simon. And Jesus, after Andrew brought Simon, he said, "You are Simon, son of John. You will be called Cephas," which when translated is Peter, and when translated again means the rock. See, this is this start of this life transformation for Peter that's going to take 3 years, and in keeping with God's work in the lives of the Old Testament, Peter renames Simon, son of John, to Peter the rock. And later on in Peter's friendship with Jesus, Jesus discipled him for 3 years, and later on Peter's going to find out why Jesus called him the rock. When Jesus said, "Upon this rock," pointing to Peter, he said, "I'm going to build my church." But I got to tell you something. Peter, who was going to lead the early church, write letters that we find in our Bibles, he was going to go past Andrew in his accomplishments for Jesus. But can I tell you something? What would have happened had Andrew not brought Peter to Jesus? What would have happened if Andrew hadn't searched for someone who was searching and then pointed him the way to the Messiah? What would have happened? There would be no Simon Peter without Andrew. And friends, as Julian and Beverly come up here, I want to encourage you to be like Jesus. Search for someone who is searching. To be like Andrew. Search for someone who is searching. And I want to ask, will you be willing to respond to that call of God on your life today? To don't just look, see. To pray with compassion for these people that we meet, and then to show them the way. Would you do that? Let's stand for our last song.
Be thou my vision, O Lord of my heart. It's hymn number 451.
Be thou my vision, O Lord.
Friends, before you go today, I want to invite you to write a name on the back of one of those hearts so that we can put them on the cross. All through the week we are in here. We are praying for all these people by name. Go ahead and write it on the back of your, write it on one of those hearts and just put it right back where it is. And then also, before you go, would you do me a favor and just take your mask down, look around, smile at the people around you, and say hello. We love you so much. God bless. Go with God.